Performance issues, he said, like I was a printer that jammed too often. That's how it started. No preamble, no private conversation, just my father-in-law, CEO of the company I helped pull out of the red 6 years ago, standing at the head of the quarterly strategy meeting and reading my professional obituary like it was a lunch menu item. He didn't look up, didn't say my name. Just, "We're letting you go. Performance issues." 30 faces turned toward me, some confused, some pretending not to notice, some watching for my reaction like it was a tennis match. My wife, seated 2 chairs down from him on the board, didn't flinch, didn't blink, just kept her pen moving across her tablet like I hadn't just been publicly executed in front of her coworkers. Our coworkers. What the hell do you say to that? I didn't say anything. I didn't argue. I closed my binder, nodded once like it was a meeting that had run long, and walked out. People shifted to make room like I had a disease. Even Rick, from facilities, avoided eye contact. And I once paid his medical bill out of pocket when the company couldn't afford his emergency surgery. Funny how short memories are when power gets involved. Security met me at the elevator. One guy I knew, the new one said, "We've been asked to escort you out." "Of course you have," I said. No sarcasm, just observation. It was raining. Of course it was raining. They didn't even let me get my umbrella from the office. By 12:13 p.m., I was out on the curb with my laptop bag and no job. By 12:18 p.m., my badge access was already revoked. I checked it just to see how efficient betrayal had become. At 12:22 p.m., I walked into our front door. She was already home. A brochure waited on the kitchen counter, folded once. Homeless shelters in the county. 2 options circled in red. "You're jobless," she said, not even looking at me. "I don't need you hanging around here." Just like that. I stared at the circles for a second, then looked at her. She was drinking from a wine glass, still in her work blouse, hair too perfect for a 12 p.m. surprise. She knew it was coming. Hell, she probably planned it. She finally looked at me. "What?" she said. "You think I'm going to carry you now? I carried your ego long enough." I didn't argue, didn't scream, didn't throw the glass like some sad movie husband. I nodded, then walked upstairs. Something broke in me that day. Not in the dramatic, weepy way you see on TikTok or self-help books. No, something simpler, something cleaner, like a bone snapping clean in half without any blood. No sharp pain, just that eerie silence when you realize you're not part of their story anymore. You're just a loose thread, and they're already pulling it out. She must have been expecting a fight. She followed me halfway up the stairs and said, "Seriously? That's it? You're not even going to fight back?" I paused, glanced over my shoulder. "You've already won, right?" Her face did this twitchy thing, like she didn't know if I was mocking her or broken. Spoiler, it was both. By the way, if you're still reading, do me a favor, tap subscribe or follow or whatever button you see. I know over 90% of you scroll through these without ever hitting it, but it actually helps the team keep going. And trust me, the next parts, you'll want to see where this ends. Anyway, I didn't slam the bedroom door. I didn't pack in a rush. I moved slowly, deliberately, like I was curating an exhibit. Bag 1, clothes, neutral, neat, non-sentimental. Bag 2, documents, originals only, no scans. Birth certificate, old trust agreement I filed 2 years ago, notarized clauses from the compliance binder she never read, and 1 red envelope labeled "in case of betrayal" that I'd tucked into a fire-safe box back when things first started to rot. Downstairs, I could hear her calling someone, probably her sister, maybe her friend Alyssa. There was laughter. She said the words, "He actually left," like she couldn't believe it. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't take anything from her side of the closet. I didn't even leave a note. At 3:37 p.m., I walked out the door. At 3:40 p.m., she texted me, "If you come back, don't expect a key." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked 2 blocks to a rental car I'd reserved under a different name 3 weeks earlier. Because here's what they never asked: why I didn't panic, why I didn't yell, why I looked so calm as they shoved me out of a company I'd poured everything into. Because sometimes, when a man doesn't fight back, it's not because he's weak, it's because he already knows what's coming next. And it's gonna hurt, but not for him. The second the door shut behind me, she turned off the porch light. Subtle, almost funny, like a sitcom gag. Except I was the punchline. No dramatic rainstorm this time, just the hiss of the sprinkler system kicking on as I walked away from the house I designed, paid for, and had my name removed from 2 months ago during a routine refinancing. That was her idea. "It's just cleaner this way," she'd said, all smiles, brushing lint off my blazer. "We're streamlining the assets." "Sure, sweetheart, streamlining." The street was quiet. I could see silhouettes of our neighbors moving behind their blinds, not watching, just vaguely aware. I think that's the part that really sticks with you, how easily the world keeps turning, even while your orbit is being rewritten without consent. My rental was a nondescript sedan. I had already moved the seat the day before, set up the Bluetooth. Everything was waiting for me. One bag in the trunk, clothes, a single pair of dress shoes, one photo of my mother, one bag in the back seat, the documents. Not just any documents, certified copies of asset logs, notarized board decisions, the original LLC formation paperwork with my name in black ink and her father's name in blue, a color mismatch no one had ever bothered to fix. All those small artifacts people ignore until they become weapons. She thought she was throwing me out of my life. The truth? I had already stepped out of it months ago. I just hadn't shut the door. The next day, I was 200 miles away, in a town with no LinkedIn connections, no board members, and no wine moms who shared her posts like scripture. I rented a temporary office inside a bland brick building sandwiched between a law firm and a failing dentist, the kind of place where you could vanish with dignity. I didn't check my phone much that weekend, but I did catch one post, a selfie, her and 3 of her friends, cocktail glasses raised. Caption, "New beginnings with my girls, freedom feels good." In the background, our living room. My leather chair was gone. In its place, that awful blush pink monstrosity she'd begged me to approve last year. "It's statement furniture, babe." Well, the statement was clear now. The comments were full of fake sympathy and quiet schadenfreude. "You deserve to be happy. So glad you're finally prioritizing you." One from her best friend. "He never really supported your growth anyway." Growth. That word always made me laugh when she used it. She said it like it came with spa days and influencer brand deals, not late nights, risk, and spreadsheets that looked like Jackson Pollock vomited numbers. She liked the title of co-founder, but hated doing anything that didn't end in applause. Let her have the wine, the chairs, the empty compliments. I was building something again, but this time, without applause, without partners, and definitely without her. On Sunday evening, while she was posting her self-care from a rooftop bar, I was sitting across from a trust attorney I'd known since before her dad ever shook my hand. He slid the papers across the table. "You really want to do this?" I didn't answer, just initialed the margins and signed. He tapped the folder. "You realize what this triggers, right?" I did. I knew exactly what Clause 14b meant. What silent Class C shares could do when activated under unjust internal severance. "You're moving fast," he said, impressed and a little scared. "She moved first," I replied. "I just moved quieter." Monday morning, she was tagged in a brunch post, mimosa in one hand, hand on a mystery man's knee, no face, just a forearm and Rolex. Someone commented, "New boo?" She replied, "You never know what's next." No, she didn't. But I did. The man she kicked out, the man everyone assumed was crushed, he was already 10 steps into the building she thought she ran, not as an employee, not even as an owner, as something far more dangerous, a silent architect. And architects don't knock when they return. They redraw the blueprint. They say power reveals who you really are. That's cute. Power doesn't reveal. It confirms. And when you hand it to people who never earned it, they treat it like costume jewelry, flashy, fragile, disposable. That Tuesday, the boardroom was buzzing with artificial optimism, the kind of energy that comes from delusion wrapped in designer blouses and overconfident handshakes. My old chair, the one with the lumbar support I paid for personally because her father was too cheap, was now occupied by my wife. Legs crossed, tablet glowing, smile sharpened for the cameras. The agenda was simple. Acquisition fast track. Now that I was out of the picture, the road was apparently clear. Her father opened with praise. This is the kind of initiative we needed. No dead weight, no distractions. Laughter. She leaned in, all confidence. "We can finalize the merger terms by Q4. Without my husband's pace, we can actually move." They chuckled again. Someone, I think from finance, asked about severance liabilities. She waved it off like a gnat. He didn't ask for anything, she said, sipping her cucumber water. He just left. A smug pause. My guess, he knows he was lucky to be here in the first place. The room nodded. They genuinely believed I walked away with nothing, that I got played, that my silence meant surrender. That's the thing about people who inherit power instead of building it. They can't imagine strength that doesn't perform for them. Across the city, at exactly 10:31 a.m., I was seated in a beige room with a notary and 2 witnesses. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, documents establishing a private holding trust for the company's core digital infrastructure, licensing rights, architecture blueprints, platform algorithms, and yes, the IP stack that powered their so-called merger. Please confirm all sections are initialed before I sign the final affidavit, I said, flipping to the signature page. The notary glanced up. You sure you want to lock it this tight? I didn't even blink. If they're going to choke on something, it might as well be the real thing. I left with the folder, a certified copy, and 3 time-stamped backup drives. Drove to a storage facility under a shell company name she wouldn't recognize if you tattooed it on her retina. Deposited everything in a biometric safe, no keys, no paper trail. Back at the office, they were already emailing press contacts. We're thrilled to announce an exciting new chapter. Her name was front and center. She was going to be the face of the merger, the woman who took control. They even started using phrases like visionary transition and modern leadership realignment. My name was nowhere in the announcement, which is funny considering the infrastructure their entire merger depended on still had my initials embedded in the root documentation, not metaphorically, literally. At the base level of the code base, each core module bore a time-stamped hash pointing back to my trust. It's amazing how many companies never verify IP lineage before signing billion-dollar deals. I checked their press packet. They'd already sent it to several outlets. I smiled, because here's the twist. I wasn't hiding. I was observing. A silent architect doesn't vanish. He embeds. And she mistook silence for absence. The board was celebrating with champagne that afternoon. I saw a picture, her arm looped through her father's, glass raised high, teeth too perfect. She looked like someone who thought she'd just inherited Rome, but the foundation wasn't theirs. They were sipping wine in a house built on land they didn't own. And I had just started preparing the earthquake. It was always going to come down to paperwork, not betrayal, not love lost, not grand gestures or slammed doors, just paper, ink, patience. Months ago, 8 to be exact, I sat in my office while my wife paced on a call with her father outside. The door was cracked open enough to hear phrases like, "He's not pushing hard enough," and "We'll never scale if he keeps babysitting engineering." I didn't say anything, I just listened. And while they plotted their ascent, I wrote Clause 14B. It didn't look like much. A single paragraph, buried in the compliance binder under equity voting resolutions. The kind of legalese even attorneys skim unless flagged. Clause 14B. In the event of internal unjust termination, defined as removal without performance documentation or board-approved resolution, pre-existing voting rights shall revert to silent Class C holders in proportion to initial issuance, effective immediately. I had it witnessed by a junior legal analyst during a company audit. He didn't ask questions. Just initialed and stamped. I notarized it myself 2 hours later in a quiet FedEx backroom. Then I filed it. Hard copy into the official archive. Soft copy into the compliance cloud. Time-stamped, backed up, encrypted, unchangeable, without majority shareholder approval, which ironically included me. And those Class C shares, the ones no one ever asked about because they were non-voting and historical artifacts, they were all consolidated in one place, the Ashford Family Management Trust, mine. Held quietly, legally, and now activated. The trigger was simple. My termination letter. I didn't have to fight it, I just had to receive it. Because nowhere in their HR folder did a single write-up exist. No prior documentation, no warnings, no performance reviews, just a boardroom ambush and a shrug, which made it unjust by definition. I opened the secure vault that morning, pulled the certified termination copy, scanned it, verified the timestamp, cross-referenced with the compliance folder, then I logged into the system. Trigger authorization, Clause 14B, status, initiated, a green bar loaded, final confirmation. Are you sure you wish to revert board voting privileges to trust proxy holders? Yes, done. Just like that, my silent Class C shares became loud. Not with noise, but with power, because structurally, the company was now legally answerable to the trust, and the trust had 5 proxies, all vetted, all previously uninvolved, all legally bound to act in the trust's best interest, not hers. None of them had her number. No one even knew their names. She thought she sat at the head of the table. She didn't realize the table had already been sold, the floor beneath it leased, and the lights she basked in wired to a switch she'd never find. This wasn't revenge. It was relief, coded into compliance, buried beneath her ambition, waiting quietly, because she never read the fine print. She skimmed, assumed, celebrated, and I waited. There's a kind of satisfaction in building the fuse before anyone smells smoke. No drama, no shouting match, no courtroom scenes. Just a clause, a line of text that rewrote the hierarchy while she was busy sipping champagne. She thought power came from attention. I knew it came from control. And now? The stage was set. The audience didn't even know the play had changed. But the next act? Oh, they'd feel it. The email hit their inbox at 7:42 a.m. on a Friday, just as the building's lights were flickering on and the smell of burnt office coffee began to mix with the quiet buzz of pre-meeting chatter. Subject line, urgent. Merger file error sent by none other than Marissa, my father-in-law's longtime assistant, the type who wears brooches with seasonal themes and still prints every email like it's a legal requirement from 1998. The body was short, shaky. Sir, merger documents bounced. Legal says there's a rights conflict. Claimed ownership doesn't align with licensing. Please advise ASAP. The phrase rights conflict is the business world's equivalent of a fire alarm that only the suits can hear. It meant something didn't line up. And in a transaction the size of theirs, something usually meant millions, maybe billions, just slipped out the back door. Across town, I was sitting in a quiet cafe, black coffee in hand, watching the market open on my phone. Not because I cared about stock prices, I just liked knowing what world they thought they were still operating in. 8:03 a.m. my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I knew that ringtone. I let it hang for 2 full rounds before answering. Her voice, tight, sharp, defensive. You did something. What did you do? No hello, no how are you, no apology for the shelter brochure. Just immediate accusation, as if I'd broken her world by quietly reclaiming mine. I waited 2 beats before speaking, let the silence itch in her ear, then calmly, you removed me. I just removed your assumption. She inhaled like she was going to say something else, then hung up. Classic move. Control the narrative by ending the conversation before it gets uncomfortable. But the problem was, she didn't control anything anymore. Because while she was racing through her morning routine, the real fire had already spread to legal. At 8:11 a.m., she called the head partner at the auditing firm they'd retained for the merger, probably expecting reassurance. Instead, she got panic. Real corporate issue panic, the kind that sounds like suppressed breathing through clenched teeth. We have a problem, he said before she even spoke. She hated that sentence. I know because I'd heard her rant about it at least a dozen times when interns used it. Now it was aimed directly at her chest. What kind of problem? We missed something. Long pause. What did you miss? Another pause, throat clear. Clause 14B. Dead silence. She didn't recognize the number. Of course not. She never read the binders, just skimmed the summaries I gave her. She assumed it was fluff, legal wallpaper. Nobody ever reads the footnotes in their own execution. We're being told the licensing rights don't exist under your current control, the partner continued. They were transferred into a holding trust weeks before the termination. Another voice in the room, probably her father's, shouting, "That's impossible." He didn't. Actually, sir, the partner interrupted. He did. It's sealed, witnessed, and timestamped by the Federal Register. Then came the best part, the platform infrastructure, the user stack, even the API patents. They're not technically part of the acquisition anymore. The paperwork was never finalized. You don't have what you think you're merging. She tried to argue. I know her style. Outrage mixed with cold, rehearsed disdain. But this wasn't an argument. It was a reckoning. Because paper beats pitch. And while she was rehearsing her new title in the mirror, I was writing the invisible script. The deal they'd been bragging about, publicly announced, softly leaked to press, internally celebrated with a rooftop dinner I'd once paid for, gone. No tech foundation, no IP leverage, no core product rights, just a glossy deck with nothing underneath. They didn't understand yet, not fully, but the dread was setting in, the kind that starts in the spine and moves outward, cold, slow, inevitable. They thought they'd thrown out dead weight. They didn't know I was the scaffolding. And now, they could feel it creaking. The envelope was thick, heavy even, the kind of weight that carries consequence before you even read the first line. It arrived at 9:17 a.m. on Monday, delivered by a stone-faced courier in a gray suit who said nothing, handed it over, and walked out. The receptionist, poor kid, signed for it without realizing she was accepting the single most important document that building had seen since the company was incorporated, stamped across the front, certified personal delivery only, inside a full revision of the company's bylaws, 14 pages of recalibrated structure, highlighted in red, effective immediately. All board voting activity is hereby frozen, pending reallocation of governance authority as per Clause 14B, signed, notarized, time-stamped. Author, Ashford Family Management Trust. In plain English, no more boardroom motions, no new hires, no merger, no quarterly reports. The company, their company, was now in legal lockdown. And the person who owned the majority equity? Me. I didn't need a chair at their table. I owned the damn wood it was built from. By 9:24 a.m., the document was in the hands of the legal team. At 9:26, her father stormed through the hallway like a warhead wrapped in a three-piece suit, shouting for explanations, dragging the compliance officer behind him like a hostage. I'm told the conversation went something like this. How the hell is this possible? The lead counsel didn't even look up at first, just flipped to the notarization page, tapped it with one finger and said, "Sir, he never transferred the real assets." "What do you mean real assets? He left. He's gone." "No, sir. He vacated a position, not ownership." A pause, then the hammer. "The tech licensing. It's all owned by a trust. Has been for months. We missed it." Apparently, he went silent after that, stared at the clause, then at the date. The date was the worst part. It was before the holiday gala, before the performance issues, before the firing, which meant everything they'd built since, the entire merger pitch, the marketing blitz, the board appointments built on sand. They'd been hosting ribbon cuttings on property they didn't own, and now the title deed was on their desk with my name on it. Meanwhile, 2 floors up, my wife was mid-call with a vendor pitching a new user platform launch tied to the now-defunct merger. Her voice, confident, clipped, corporate perfect, froze when her phone vibrated. A text from her friend Lauren. "Hey, why was your name pulled from the press release?" She blinked, then again, then checked her email. The new press memo was brief, less than 100 words, just an internal update. "Pending corporate ownership clarification, please pause all external statements. Previous leadership references have been suspended until further notice." No name, no title, just a freeze. She called PR. No one answered. She pinged the interim communications director. No reply. Her father was unreachable. That's when it hit her. The walls weren't closing in. The floor was falling out because power isn't taken away with noise. It's removed in silence. And the world doesn't collapse in one moment. It retracts slowly. First your name gets pulled, then your key card stops working, then your email goes dark, then one by one, people stop returning your calls, your calendar clears itself, and your favorite seat in the boardroom has someone else's notepad on it. She didn't cry, not yet. She didn't scream. That would come later. Right now, she just sat there staring at a screen where her name had been 20 minutes ago, and realizing she had no idea how the company even worked without me. Because she never asked, she assumed, and I was done correcting her. The boardroom had never been silent before. Not like this. No polite laughter, no passive-aggressive keyboard taps, no fake clearing of throats. Just quiet, cold, and deliberate. Like something sacred had been broken, and everyone was waiting to see who would admit it first. The emergency meeting was scheduled for 7:30 a.m. She arrived at 7:28, heels echoing across the marble floor like punctuation marks made of ego. Her assistant trailed behind her, holding a leather folio, visibly shaking. The door opened and she didn't wait for the assistant to announce her. She didn't even knock. She walked in like it was still hers, except it wasn't. The room had changed. 3 of the usual board members were there, shell-shocked, quiet, staring at their tablets like they'd been handed obituaries, but 5 others she didn't recognize. 5 sharply dressed, utterly composed individuals. Unfamiliar faces, no introductions, no small talk, just presence. They were already seated when she entered, already reviewing documents, already in control. She stopped halfway to her chair, my old chair, and demanded, "Who are these people?" No one answered, not right away. Then David, head of legal, cleared his throat and said, "These are the appointed proxies of the Ashford Family Trust." She blinked, confused, then angry. What the hell does that mean? One of the proxies, a woman in a slate gray suit with silver glasses and zero patience, replied smoothly, "It means your voting rights are suspended. This is now a Class C review session." She laughed. Actually laughed. "You can't be serious." They were. She turned to her father, sitting halfway down the table, noticeably older than he looked a week ago. "Dad, are you just going to sit there?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't even lift his head. He just said, "You should have asked him who he really was." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary. It was the kind that carves something out of you, like an excavation, like truth arriving late but unapologetic. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stepped forward, probably to argue, to threaten. She'd always been good at that, at making people hesitate. But the proxies didn't flinch, didn't blink. They'd seen her kind before. Vote was called, 7 members. 5 votes in favor of full operational freeze, asset reassessment, and transfer of interim executive authority to trust proxies. 2 dissenting. Guess who? Result: passed. Effective immediately. Her father didn't vote. He didn't need to. She turned to the room, desperate now. "This is my company." The silver glasses woman raised an eyebrow. "Not on paper." Then security walked in. Not the normal building staff, the kind you don't know until they're already holding the door open. Suits, calm expressions, earpieces. Professional. "Ma'am, we'll need you to leave the room." She looked around. No one spoke. Not even her father. Not even the 3 remaining loyalists on the board who'd once cheered her appointment like she was royalty. They were suddenly very interested in the seams of the wood grain in the table. No eye contact. No salvation. Her hands curled into fists. "This is a mistake," she said, voice cracking for the first time. "No," said one of the proxies, flipping to the next page in her binder. "This is structure." Security didn't touch her, didn't need to. She walked out on her own. Pride, rage, confusion, layered in every step. But what followed her was worse than embarrassment. It was the unmistakable scent of irrelevance. Because when she walked through those doors, she thought she was leading an empire. But empires don't follow names, they follow deeds. And hers weren't worth the ink. The collapse didn't explode. It peeled, one missed email, then a second. Then a reply all panic spiral that started with, "Can someone clarify?" and ended with, "We need to speak immediately." By 9:00 a.m., their inboxes were hemorrhaging. Urgent, signature authority locked. Who authorized the asset freeze? Why is my admin access revoked? By 10:15, my wife texted me, "We need to talk. Now." No punctuation, no greeting, just desperation barely dressed up as demand. At 11:02, another came through. "What the damn did you do?" I didn't respond. My phone stayed face down, silent on the glass table of a high-rise penthouse 2 blocks from their office, the same bank-owned building that financed their expansion 5 years ago. Irony, they never once looked up. By noon, she had texted 16 times. Then the voicemail started. I didn't listen to any of them, but I skimmed the transcripts. "We can fix this. We just need to. This is serious, and you're making it worse. You're not helping anyone, including yourself." At 12:34 p.m., her father called, twice. By 1:07 p.m., the lawyer chimed in, first an email, then a call, then another. The subject line: asset clarification request. Immediate response required. They were unraveling, slipping. All that control they thought they had was leaking through their fingers faster than they could type. At 2:44 p.m., she sent another message. Please, I'm not even mad anymore. Just tell me what you want. What I wanted? Peace. Silence. Not silence as in no sound. Silence as in absence of her, of them, of that whole dynasty of arrogance that thought I was just another placeholder husband in their lineage of corporate pageantry. They never knew who I was, never cared to, and now I had no obligation to explain myself. By 3:50 p.m., the missed calls number hit 162. I took a screenshot, not to gloat, to remember, because 3 months ago, I was a ghost in their narrative, disposable, the guy you quietly move out of frame so the real players can shine. Now, the trust had full control, voting shares, licensing, IP rights, contracts, even the real estate lease they forgot was tied to the original incorporation documents under my name. The headquarters they operated from belonged to an entity I hadn't spoken aloud in years, but still signed for every quarter. At 4:10 p.m., I put on a coat, took the elevator to the street level, walked into the autumn air. Downtown was busy, usual movement, tourists, mid-level suits, nobody paying attention. That was the beauty of it, being invisible, by choice this time. At the crosswalk, I saw them, her and her father, walking fast, shoulders tense, conversation clipped and low. Her hair was frayed, eyes darting. He looked smaller than I remembered, older, like the last 5 days had aged him in dog years. They didn't see me. I was 10 feet away, maybe less. They were too busy putting out fires I lit months ago with a single spark buried in a legal clause. She turned her head at one point, almost looked through me, not at me, through, and I realized then she still didn't recognize what I'd become. Not a rival, not a villain, just absence. Perfect, cold absence. Because irrelevance isn't just not being noticed. It's being so far removed from someone's assumed control that they can't even summon the language to blame you. So I kept walking, and behind me their world kept shrinking. The message came at 6:12 a.m. Early, too early for pride. We can fix this. Let's talk. No punctuation again, that faux casual tone she always used when trying to sound unbothered, except now it shook with subtext, not a command, a plea dressed in a whisper. She still didn't get it. She still thought this was about negotiation, that we were somewhere on the familiar map of relationship warfare, hurt, react, punish, apologize, cycle back. She had no idea she was already outside the borders. The war had ended. She'd just been too busy giving press interviews to notice. I didn't answer immediately. I let the hours pass. Let her wonder if the message even delivered. Let her spiral into imagining boardrooms she no longer had access to, rooms she once ruled now echoing with decisions made without her name even appearing in the minutes. At 10:31 a.m., I sent a response. No words, just a link, a direct URL to the SEC's official filing database, time-stamped, authenticated, public, Ashford Family Management Trust, final transfer of voting control and IP holdings. Filed, accepted, irrevocable. She would have clicked it instantly, scanned it with widening eyes, breath catching as the implications began to form shapes her legal team hadn't warned her about. Then the attachment, a crisp, high-resolution photo of the newly seated board, 7 individuals, suits calm, professional, a surgeon, a systems architect, 2 regulatory experts, and 3 finance veterans with no public profiles, no social media, no mutual friends, no golf trips with her father, no anniversary toasts or Sunday brunches. Beneath the image, a caption, effective immediately. She didn't reply for 23 minutes. Then, what do you want? Short, flat, the spark, vinegar, and for the first time, honest. What do I want? Not power. I already had it, not revenge. That would have required me to still care what she thought, not reconciliation. That door had been sealed and soundproofed. I stared at the message for a while, then typed back, to be forgotten. I hit send, because that was the truth. That was the deepest cut. She wanted drama. A final showdown, one last scene where she could cry or scream or convince someone that she was the wounded party, that I was ungrateful or broken or cruel. But I wasn't broken. I was gone. She could keep her stories, the soft focus Instagram posts, The fake laughter with mutual friends who'd already started switching sides the second my name reappeared in the asset filings. She could keep the house I designed but never loved. The car she never learned to park straight. The circle of people who only knew her when I was still around to build the backdrop. I didn't want it, didn't need it, because silence isn't surrender. It's exile by choice, and in that exile I found something sharper than payback. Irreversibility. She could post all the reflective quotes she wanted. She could light sage and cry in yoga class, but she'd never reclaim the one thing she thought was guaranteed, being central to the story. Because now the story didn't need her, and the ending, it had already been filed. The stage lights were cooler than expected, diffused, professional, merciless. I stood just behind the curtain as the announcer's voice echoed through the auditorium, smooth as velvet dipped in steel. And now we welcome to the stage our partner, silent architect, and founder, Mr. Ashford. There was a pause just long enough for anticipation to breathe. Then the applause. It started in the front, early claps from the execs who'd read the summit booklet. Then the outer rows picked up. The room swelled with it. And as I stepped out, the spotlight found me. Tailored suit, no tie, crisp lines, clean presence, nothing flashy, just undeniable. Phones rose, cameras clicked, but none of that mattered. What mattered was backstage. Behind the monitors, behind the smoke and forced smiles, stood two people who hadn't seen me in months. Her father, still in his signature navy blazer, hands clenched behind his back, staring at the screen like it had betrayed him personally. And beside him, her, no makeup or too much. It was hard to tell under those harsh hallway fluorescents. She looked washed out, like someone trying to blend into a world that used to revolve around her, that used to require her. Now, no one noticed she was even standing there. A younger executive, 20s, full of buzzwords and eagerness, leaned toward him, whispering, "Who is that?" There was a long silence, and then the father's voice, almost too quiet to catch. "That was my son-in-law." Not Ashford, not partner, not founder, just was, as if admitting that alone was an act of confession. Back on stage, I stood before the crowd, clicker in hand. Behind me, the screen shifted, timeline slides, metrics, graphs of the very infrastructure they'd all admired but never traced. No company logos, just data, just proof, and no trace of her name. I began calmly. No drama, no showmanship, just clarity. "We often talk about visibility and leadership," I said, "but some of the most powerful moves are made in silence. Away from the spotlight, beneath the noise." A few heads nodded. I continued. "We mistake noise for presence, but architecture is what stays standing when the noise stops." And I watched, without turning, without needing to, that monitor backstage, her face frozen, hollow. Her father, visibly aged, understanding every sentence as a personal audit, every line as a carefully aimed reminder. I didn't mention them. Not once. But I didn't need to. The boardroom was gone. The votes were counted. The structure had been rewritten. Now the entire industry watched me not as a man who lost everything, but as the one they never saw coming. After the keynote, handshakes followed, interviews, strategic dinners. I passed a hallway where an older journalist smiled and said, "You're the story everyone missed." I nodded. That's the point. That night, I returned to the penthouse, opened a bottle, one I'd been saving for years, but never found a reason to open. No toasts, no ceremony, just one glass, one drink for the man I had been, and one final unspoken toast for the man they never really knew. Because the truth was, never that I disappeared. It was that I was never meant to be seen, until it was too late.